Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Really excited about this morning. We've got Ambassador Eric Nelson. Eric is the U.S. Ambassador to Bosnia-Herzegovina. Thanks for joining us, Ambassador Nelson.
Thank you, Mike. Great to see you, and thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, appreciate you joining us today. Hey, before we get started, everybody, why don't you go ahead and drop in the comments where you're actually watching from? That'd be exciting to see where in the world this LinkedIn Live is reaching to learn about what Ambassador Nelson does with the State Department. Awesome. So, hey, Ambassador Nelson, can I just call you Eric for this?
Sure.
All right. So Eric, I think the most important part is for people to understand, what's your career like? I think they'd be interested to see, how do you get to be an ambassador? Can you share a little bit about your career trajectory that gets you to where you are today?
Well, first, there are a couple different trajectories to becoming an ambassador. One is to spend a career as a Foreign Service officer. About 2/3 of the president's appointees are career service. The presidents typically appoint about 1/3 from their political and private connections. I'm part of that 2/3 that's come up through the ranks. I joined the Foreign Service way back in 1990 after getting an MBA and an engineering degree. I started out in public service as a Peace Corps volunteer in Liberia, West Africa. And my early experience as an exchange student, really, I just fell in love with being overseas and the opportunity to live in a different culture, learn a new language. And so after Peace Corps, I took the Foreign Service exam, came on as a generalist. We have different types of generalists. And I worked my way up mostly through the management side. But in the last 15 years, been in leadership roles, which have me much more engaged in public diplomacy and strategic planning, really representing the United States overseas, speaking for my country, speaking for my government, speaking for my president.
Yeah.
And I just love that. The opportunity to advance U.S. interests, to have our voice carry weight and contribute to that. It's just been a fantastic career. Before coming to Bosnia-Herzegovina, I was working for, we call it the 7th floor of the department. But I was executive director to actually 3 secretaries. I set a record.
Oh, wow.
Secretary Kerry, Secretary Tillerson, and Secretary Pompeo before Secretary Pompeo and recommended me and President Trump nominated me for ambassador to Bosnia-Herzegovina.
I mean, that's such an incredible responsibility and an honor to represent our country overseas. I can't imagine. I want to get into what you do over there, but before I do that, you said you had an engineering degree.
Yeah.
That's not so. When you went to college, were you going to college with the intent on joining Foreign Service, or did that just kind of happen after that overseas? How did you come up with engineering? I guess
I came up with engineering because in that day, that was what many parents were pushing their kids to do, the best prospects. By the time I graduated, I was a chemical engineer. In that day and age, most engineers were hired into the petroleum sector, and the oil price hit a big it bottomed out.
Mhm.
So most of my classmates went on to grad school. Many went on to med school and law school and business and MBA school. I decided to think harder about what I wanted to do because, frankly, with engineering, I aced physical chemistry, but I was really reaching my limit in math. And I realized I'm not sure this is going to sustain me for a career, and that's where I ended up going off to teach. I taught math and science as a Peace Corps volunteer, and came back and continued with an MBA. But then, as I was looking at the business prospects, in that day and age, it was all about, this was in the 80s, and it was what was coming out of the business schools was everything's about the bottom line.
Mhm.
And that was not my experience of business. My father was 40 years with Johnson and Johnson,
Mhm.
a company is one of those companies that's looking at more than the bottom line.
Yep.
And I'm not endorsed. I'm speaking for my father,
Right. You're
but
not endorsing anything.
um, but business contributes more than the return on the shareholder investment.
Yeah.
And it also is a member of the community. It's an employer. It takes care of its customers. Um, and I decided I wanted to do more service.
Yep.
So that's why I looked more at public service and ended up taking the foreign service exam and passing it. It's free. You can take it as many times as you like. If you're good at the GRE or the GMAT, you'll do fine. Um, and I've loved the career. Every few years, it's similar to the military in that every few years you get a new billet,
Mhm.
you get a new challenge, and you're
Yeah.
expected to develop over an arc of career. And you have that employment security with the constant challenge to develop your skills and grow as a leader.
I love it. I love it. Have you found, I got to ask, that your engineering background, especially chemical engineering, has throughout the course of your career, I'm sure most people don't expect you to have a chemical engineering degree. Have there been times where people have said stuff and you're like, oh, yeah, I know, right? Because of that experience?
Well, until um, it was a little bit of validation when Secretary Tillerson and then followed by Secretary Pompeo came on, who were both engineers.
Oh,
Um, but prior to that, I mean, I say I'm one of the diverse voices in the room.
yeah.
The way an engineer looks at a problem is different than the way an economist or a political scientist would look at a problem, and that's important. So I think the engineering training helped me with looking at processes and looking at um, risk management
Hmm.
that never going to reach perfect.
Right.
And you always achieve a better result by iterating. That's how engineers approach problems. And you need to tackle a problem, but you can't continue to research it forever. At some point, you got to try it out.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And you're right. There's a different perspective there, and I think that well, it bears out based on, like you said, the last two secretaries were engineers. It kind of leads to leadership. It supports the ability to lead large, complex organizations and solve the biggest problems. So I think that leads into, I guess, what I would ask is, at an embassy, like what does I don't think a lot of people in my network truly understand what an embassy does. Can you share a little bit? I know it's a huge question. I've been overseas. I kind of get it. But like, what does your team do in Bosnia? Like, what is, aside from representing U.S. interests, like, can you talk a little bit about that?
So, except for some military elements in some countries that report to the combatant commander, um, the ambassador is in charge of all U.S. government presence overseas.
Mhm.
Much of that presence is resident. Some of that
Mhm.
is just coming and going and visiting temporary duty engagements.
Mhm.
But an embassy is that, and the president gives every ambassador a letter of instruction that
Mhm.
you are my representative, ensuring that we have a whole of government approach in our bilateral relations with each country. So here in Bosnia-Herzegovina, we have 6 agencies present. They all, of course, are serving their headquarters,
Mm-hmm.
but they all are working for me, and me with my deputy chief of mission. Our job is to ensure that we're all on the same page and working for unified goals. Our goals in Bosnia-Herzegovina are to secure the Dayton peace
Mm-hmm.
that was hard won and secured by NATO 26 years ago. Um, Help this country fulfill its destiny as a democratic country integrated into the Euro-Atlantic community. For that, they've got still a lot of work to do, raising their standards to the standards of NATO and the EU.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous human resources potential here, which needs more support for real economic growth to create economic opportunity and more space for U.S. business,
Mm-hmm.
but also for stronger democratic institutions that function democratically and not at the control of specific political parties.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that, we're pushing hard for rule of law
Mm-hmm.
um, because there's too much corruption. And President Biden made that very clear in his executive order in June that corruption is a threat to us worldwide,
Yeah.
and we've got to get a better job of combating it. And that is really going to require a whole of government approach.
Yeah, I can see that. I think I like for my audience, and you're really you're like the commander of all U.S. presence in Bosnia Herzegovina, but you're also the integrator in a lot of ways. So
Yeah,
you've got these 6 agencies here, like they own the people, but you own the mission.
correct.
And okay, great. So they're OPCON to you for our audience. I mean, you have operational control of what they do within
And,
Bosnia Herzegovina.
and my team, I am responsible for the platform that
Mm-hmm.
keeps them safe and productive as well.
Awesome, awesome. So I think what really, and you mentioned it with the Dayton Peace Accord, I wanted to share with the crowd, and I think many people here may have also served there. In January 1996, I took a train from Darmstadt, Germany, down to Croatia, and then came into Bosnia Herzegovina. And I was waiting for the Sava River Bridge to be built. I was in a counterintelligence force protection team that actually was assigned to an armor battalion, and we actually enforced the Dayton Peace Accord. So we were there talking to all the locals. I was in a town called Odzak, and once the Dayton Peace Accord was signed, we actually had to take it to all the different elements and like show them copies, let them know that their leaders had signed off on it. And as of this date, we'd expected them to move back to where the line was, for everybody to kind of separate out. So I spent about 6 months of my life in Bosnia, and that city that I was in of Otak was a decent sized city, and there was nobody else there. It was completely destroyed. There'd been many battles fought there. And when I originally connected with you, I looked up Odzak on Google, and to see what the town looks like now just like made my heart sing. It made me feel that what we did was something that was special. And
Sing, not sink, right?
think, and so sing.
Sing, right? Yeah.
Well, you don't want me singing, but yeah, like my heart was singing.
Yes.
It really resonated with me when I saw those photos, and I want to come back and visit someday. I want to take my kids someday to Bosnia and see, like that we were a part of this. So can you talk a little bit about the changes? I mean, corruption's all over the world, and I think we're always looking to get rid of that. And I think it is a huge part of being success. And I've been to over 30 countries, so I get it. You get it as well. But can you talk about like how Bosnia has changed since '96 and where you see it going?
So last year was the 25th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Accord. So we tried to use that as a time to really take stock of what's been achieved in these 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
As you just recall, and as you described, that immediate implementation of the peace accords, that took 60,000 troops. That was a huge commitment on the part of NATO, led by the U.S., which sadly came after more than 3 years of a horrible war. Many people don't realize what kind of horrible war had happened in this part of Europe in the 20th century, where 100,000 people lost their lives.
Yeah.
And more than 1 million were displaced. And many returned to their communities, but many didn't.
Yeah.
This is a war that coined the phrase ethnic cleansing. This is a war that's culminated in acts of genocide in Srebrenica. So it was a horrific experience for Bosnia-Herzegovina and for the former Yugoslavia. But it was also a success that the combination of military intervention and hard diplomacy brought the warring parties to an agreement. And the agreement, that Dayton Peace Agreement, which was reached at Wright-Patterson, they chose a place that was not pretty, where the negotiators could not be comfortable. They had to focus on the task at hand and end this. And they came up with a proposal that the solution to peace was guaranteeing each of the three constituent peoples, the Bosniak, the Croat, and the Serb here, some kind of guarantees of power sharing going forward in Bosnia-Herzegovina. Those guarantees, unfortunately, have not facilitated reintegration. They have slowed reconciliation. They have slowed progress because it has those separations have led to a very entrenched patronage network. But the peace has been very solid. And it was followed by very important reforms like the unification of the former warring armies. There had been three armies here. And they are now combined since 2004 in the armed forces of Bosnia-Herzegovina, a good NATO partner who had contributed to our Afghanistan mission, who are trusted peacekeepers and are real professionals, and are advancing on their compatibility toward their integration to interoperability with NATO. So there have been some real successes that right now there's only a monitoring force assembled by the European Union that continues to monitor for the safe and secure environment. That's the extent of the military engagement now. But that's come after years and years of hard work, one, through a decisive military intervention and a strong commitment on the part of the United States to put boots on the ground to back up a peace agreement, and it worked.
Yeah.
And it worked. So when you see this, we've seen this fail in other places. It's important to see Bosnia-Herzegovina and appreciate this can work with resolve and with the right partners.
I remember distinctly. I mean, I was off our little base camps, talking to the local community all the time. Young Private Quinn on his team, but I remember talking to a lot of the people on all three sides, and one enduring theme from them is, the reason that they were not still fighting was because America came, and that they respected, our presence, our commitment, our support, and they said as long as we're here, that they were going to abide by that, by that treaty. But if we left, they would probably go back to fighting. It was the respect of our country being there. And I heard this probably 50 to 100 times from people in the community when we talked about, will this last? Are there threats and everything else like that? So it's incredible to see that we put forth that commitment, made that change, and they haven't been fighting since. I'm not sure. When did we leave? When did U.S. forces officially leave Bosnia, approximately?
The first deployment was I-4, the implementation force, and then came the stabilization force, which I think wound up in 2004.
Oh, wow. So we've been out for a while.
Yeah.
Well, that's
We still have a NATO headquarters here,
Mhm.
which is their mandate is to promote defense reform
Mhm.
and the progress of the armed forces. So we still have significant commitments.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to, if you don't mind. Oh, there we go. Political nuances can be challenging. This is from Ernie Bragg. Challenging to describe, especially to folks working on the ground. How do you communicate intent or bridge disparate stakeholders when in a dynamic, changing environment? That's an interesting question for you, Eric.
Well, I think that's kind of the kernel of the core of my job as an ambassador is to explain what our objectives are,
Yep.
both to my team, but also to the host nation partners here
Mhm.
and the citizens of Bosnia-Herzegovina, and sometimes too to taxpayers and representatives in the U.S. Um, so you've got to. Um, I think that's the art of diplomacy, is looking for the overlap
Mhm.
and looking for the consensus, and then finding room to expand that consensus. And that's a big challenge in this country where there are such divisions, where there is such a strong need for trust building,
Mhm.
um, getting them to see where their interests are shared, where they can agree to move forward,
Mhm.
that's what diplomacy is about.
Mhm.
And so that's a lot of what I do. Of course, you have a lot of spoilers who are just trying to get their their narrow interests ahead of everybody else's. So it's a hard lift,
Yeah.
but we've had some good successes.
Absolutely. And I could see where having someone that has 30 years experience in the foreign service would have built those skills to be able to, you'd have the experience, the wisdom to be able to bring that all together and really build a team. That's exciting. So I gotta ask, you're the first ambassador that I've ever seen, the first person in the State Department to be on LinkedIn. How, without endorsing LinkedIn or anything like that, but how have you leveraged, like, has being active on social media platforms like LinkedIn helped you build those teams or communicate?
Well, I think this gets back to that challenge of who we are and what are we about, and how do you communicate that? And I've been a big advocate for social media from the
Mhm.
beginning, and I'm one to ask for forgiveness rather than permission to let's get started. Um, when I was in Consul General in Munich, we were the first consulate to tweet. That was in 2009. I mean, it's hard to imagine that there was a time when we weren't all tweeting left and right.
Yeah.
When I got to Costa Rica as deputy chief of mission, I worked with our team there to make a big push in Facebook, where the social media was the only way that we could really communicate what we were doing in Costa Rica, where we weren't writing big checks anymore that got headlines for assistance, because Costa Rica is a strong middle income country.
Mhm.
But the broad texture of our partnership with Costa Rica could really only be captured by a kind of a social media stream.
Mhm.
And we had by the time I left, we went from 1,700 followers to 200,000, which is 5% of the whole population.
Wow.
And Costa Rica is still top 10 in terms of penetration of all embassies in Facebook.
Yeah.
So when I got to when I got here, uh, I started to get LinkedIn requests from the members of Bosnia-Herzegovina's very strong diaspora.
Mhm.
And these were coming to my private account. I thought, gee, what am I going to do with these? Because your private social media and your official social media are two different things.
Mhm.
So I realized we should be paying attention to this network, because this is a network where people are more serious, they're more professional,
Mhm.
they talk about what they're doing, what they're trying to accomplish. It's a network full of academics and entrepreneurs and young people looking for opportunity. So that's an important constituency for us.
Yeah.
And we started with an official profile, sadly, I'm the only ambassador still to be doing this, but this is a network we should be involved in, and I think the U.S. government should be exploiting this more. I see foreign government leaders doing this, and it's interestingly, though this is a U.S. hosted network, there's still a lot more there to explore.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it because you can give a different perspective, and it's a different audience, and you can target your audience as well on LinkedIn, which was really exciting for me. One thing I think will be interesting, I know we talked about this previously, but why work primarily through your official ambassador page as opposed to an embassy page?
So we have an embassy page because, of course, we want to be recruiting talent and representing what our team does. We also have the ambassador profile, which is my leadership pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a commanding officer, I have my unique, authentic voice that I want to share, and frankly, that's attracted more followership than the embassy page, because people like that sense of connecting and interaction, and I learn a lot by just a few minutes every day on the network, seeing what's happening in my network. So I find it very valuable. What I like about it too is I'm going to have 11,000 followers to pass on to my successor.
Yeah.
And he will contribute his unique voice and his own priorities and perspectives to this. But everybody who's interested in what's the EU ambassador to Bosnia-Herzegovina thinking and doing is still going to have that connection.
I mean, that's an incredible benefit to your successor, to give them, really a boost, a pedestal to stand on, that their voice reaches a lot, and like to start off day one and be able to reach an audience of 11,000 people on LinkedIn around the world. I mean, that's years of work, and if they keep doing it, I mean, it's only going to continue to exponentially grow. So thank you. Thank you for being a leader. I didn't know that about being the first, Twitter user, pretty much the first Facebook, and now the first LinkedIn. So thank you for being a trailblazer on this, because this is how we get our information. This is how we connect with people and build relationships. And so getting to know you through LinkedIn has been incredible for me. And I've loved seeing the successes that I wouldn't have seen on other platforms.
Well, I mean, I don't remember when we first connected, but there's a bit of kismet, because I really, it helps when to meet a LinkedIn top voice, but to see, again, how you've seen the potential of this network, for connecting people with opportunity. That's a lot of what I'm hoping to achieve as well.
I love it. So I guess I want to keep this, be respectful of your time. I know how busy you are. Last part, since we're talking about connecting people with opportunity, can you talk about opportunities for veterans or military spouses? Probably more veterans because it's overseas, but with foreign service.
So, of course, active duty personnel have opportunities to serve at embassies, working for the defense attaché and the senior defense officer in the Office of Defense Cooperation. But within the State Department, we actively recruit veterans.
Oh.
We have 7,000 veterans working for the State Department of State, and they're an important part of the diverse team that we need to really be effective at tackling problems and focusing on objectives and achieving results. So the range of opportunities that we offer are pretty broad. The generalists, the officers, we are recruited through the Foreign Service exam that I took. There are 5 types. We're looking for public diplomacy professionals. We're looking for political, economic, consular, serving American citizens and issuing visas and passports, and management officers. Then we hire a lot of specialists. These are construction managers, facility managers, medical doctors, nurses, information technology managers, security engineers, diplomatic couriers. Oh, how many more? Let me check my list.
So
You know,
pretty much everything.
a lot of skill sets that veterans have. And veterans, especially who have served overseas, bring a great experience set that I think they would enjoy. A big one I'm forgetting is diplomatic security, one of our very largest bureaus, keeping us all safe overseas. We also have language officers, technical specialists, and office management specialists, the knowledge managers that we rely on to keep us on schedule and keep us on record.
So do you only take the foreign service exam for the generalist roles?
The exam is required for the generalist roles. The other recruitments run on independent cycles, and they have an exam component, but it's an open application. All the information is available, and everyone should follow careers.state.gov.
Yep.
Careers.state.gov. We also hire civil service, so this does not offer you opportunities to get overseas, except for temporary assignments. But we recruit a lot. Some of those 7,000 veteran employees that we have are civil servants, and those jobs are available, of course, on usajobs.com.
Oh.
We also have a network. I know your followers are scattered across the country. We have at careers.state.gov, you'll find a path to meeting the multiple diplomats in residence that we have scattered across universities. And they're there to recruit at the college level, but also at all levels.
Oh, wow.
So we've got these people covering every region of the states. They're available in person and online to help answer questions about careers in the Foreign Service.
Oh, that's exciting. So if a transitioning service member veteran is interested in a career at the State Department, they can go to careers.state.gov and find a diplomat in residence somewhere in the area, and their job is to actually like talk to people that are interested in the State Department, answer questions, maybe open doors. Oh, wow. That's
So
fantastic.
they host events, they attend job fairs, so you can kind of find out where they might be at a job fair and meet up.
So for careers.state.gov, is that same process kind of like USA Jobs, or do you run, is it get run a little differently? Like an 8-page resume and all the other stuff, or is it a little more traditional?
Well, careers.state.gov is kind of the big billboard.
Okay.
And of course, we're also on LinkedIn. And so you can follow the opportunities there. Our sister agencies like the United States Agency for International Development, they have a big footprint as well. So I should put in a pitch for them too.
No, that's fantastic. So I think that's great. I think that it really would help us. And I talk to people, always talk to someone that knows before you decide to go in a certain direction. So if they reach out to those diplomats and residents, that would be a great entry point into the State Department. They can help guide them in the process.
Exactly.
Well, I guess, Ambassador Nelson, thank you so much this morning. I want to give you a chance to kind of, is there anything else you'd like to add, or share with the community?
Well, I want to thank you again, Mike, for this idea. This is my first LinkedIn Live. I'm hoping I can get permission from LinkedIn to do the same, because this network offers a lot, and this kind of ability to connect. And I so admire what you're doing for veterans, helping them find opportunity as they transition to their second or third career. And I'm really happy that I'm able to suggest to them that they consider continuing to serve this flag,
Yep.
that one, at an embassy or a consulate around the world. We offer great opportunities to veterans. And anyone who wasn't thinking of that, I hope they are now.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I can't see how they wouldn't be, because one of the biggest things we're looking for is a continued mission and opportunity to continue serving. And I can think of no greater honor or responsibility than to do what you are doing right now. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Stay
And
well.
thanks. Keep us safe. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye-bye.